candidate for president and former commissioner of the Internal Revenue Service from 2003 to 2007, Mark Everson. Hey, Mark Everson, great to have you with us, Mark.
Nice to be with you.
Now, tell us about your presidential campaign and whether or not you think you're going to get in the CNN debates. And by the way, Mr. Commissioner, we're going to be there. So we were there in Cleveland, and we're also going to be there in L.A. So hopefully you'll be on that stage. How do you make this work?
Well, we're in touch with CNN. I've written them a letter, and also the Reagan Foundation. I'm one of 18 candidates that is recognized by the RNC as a part of this race. So I do think that it's entirely appropriate, given my record of public service and having supervised the immigration system in the Reagan administration when I was the deputy commissioner of the INS, and as you mentioned, later in the second Bush administration, IRS commissioner. I also was a deputy at the Office of Management and Budget, helped set up the Homeland Security Department. Immigration, taxes, Homeland Security, they're all big issues for the election. But I'm running because I don't think that with all the challenges we have, our politicians are going to sort things out and get us moving forward. They're just too intertwined with special interests and all the donors. So it takes somebody who I think has private sector background, which I do. I've run factories and lived and worked overseas in Turkey, France, and Zambia, in addition to this country, of course. But so I've got that perspective, but I know the government inside out, and I think that helps. And your listeners can go to my program. It's Mark, MARK4FOR America.com to see what this is all about.
MarkForAmerica.com. Chairman Everson, I want to get to the IRS for a minute. Obviously, you're the commissioner in the second George Bush term. Lois Lerner, a lot of people can't understand why we can't get at this lady. She granted only one conservative group nonprofit status in 36 months. She targeted Sarah Palin's daughter. Tea Party groups are still waiving approval from the Internal Revenue Service. What's the deal here?
Well, I think this is a pretty sorry chapter in the history of the tax agency. They made huge mistakes. You can't view an application of an organization against its policies. You have to look at its activities. And when they went down that road, categorizing applications, throwing them into buckets based on Tea Party as a name, that was just a real distortion of the process, a terrible thing to do. So they did that, and then the other problem on this is this continuing inability to produce the documents that the Congress has required. It was apparent from May 2013 that every email that Lois Lerner ever wrote was going to be needed to be looked at by the Congress, but it took them a year to figure out they didn't have them all. And then some of the backup tapes that they had apparently were destroyed after the commissioner or gave an order that everything should be retained. So this has been horrible, and the Congress has gotten understandably upset and cut the funding, which isn't productive in terms of providing good service to taxpayers, but now you can't get through on the phone at the IRS. So it's a big problem.
Now, Commissioner Everson, Lois Lerner was part of your organization when you were the commissioner. Did you ever interact with her, meet with her, talk to her?
Yes, in fact, we had programs in 2004 and 2006 where we looked not at C4, social welfare organizations, but at C3s, which are normal charities and churches, which they're prohibited by law from either participating as an advocate or to campaign against any political candidate at any level. That's a bright line. It's not like the C4. We had a program that it was launched at my insistence because we were getting complaints about this. So we followed up and we had a program. It was very even-handed. And in fact, this same inspector general looked at it after a complaint was lodged, and he determined that in a report that was issued in February of 2005, that the program was even-handed. So I know this can be done correctly. It was done correctly when I was there. So I'm hard-pressed to understand how it all went so badly off track.
Now, in your interactions with Lois Lerner, sir, at the time that you were commissioner, I mean, did you find her to be fair, competent, or did you see any evidence of her, I don't know what you would call it, partisanship in executing her job?
No, I saw no evidence of that because we were talking about these specific issues that I just mentioned, and the program was executed correctly by all accounts. So I haven't seen all these emails, of course, but I've seen enough of them to be disturbed by what was written in a bunch of them.
Well, you know, it's as you know, Mr. Commissioner, everybody's afraid of.
Call me Mark. That's all right.
All right, Mark. Everybody's afraid of the Internal Revenue Service. I mean, you go back to the Richard Nixon days where he had his target list and wanted people audited. So the big fear that everybody has is that this mammoth organization with all this power can turn on its citizens based on what their political agenda is. And that's a little bit of what we've seen with Lerner. You know, why haven't, I guess the frustration, why haven't we been able to just get to the bottom of it?
Well, first, I agree with your point entirely. When I ran the organization, I called the shots down the middle, and I'm running for president, and a central piece of my program is that I execute the laws as written, not as I might wish them to be. I feel this administration in particular has gone way past the line in terms of the executive order on immigration and on, in my old lane, the Affordable Care Act and the IRS deadlines that are changing those willy-nilly. You can't do that. That's one thing, because just to your central point, you need to be respected as non-partisan in both instances, in any instance. And so that's just essential to this. And what really has happened here is the inability to produce these emails and everything else. The Senate Finance Committee just issued their report. They said it was delayed by a year because of the inaction of the agency. It's just been unfortunate, and I hope that we're now getting to the conclusion of all this.
Unbelievable.
By the way, the Justice Department still has an active criminal investigation. They've got to finish that up. Otherwise, that'll be hanging out there. That shouldn't be allowed to happen.
Well, yes, we've got to get closure on this without a doubt. Mark, I want to get to, by the way, if you want more info, go to markforamerica.com. That's FOR. Mark, I want to get to immigration amnesty. And without commenting on the Trump plan, don't know if you had a chance to read that. What is the Everson plan for dealing with the illegal immigrants in the United States?
Well, I favor comprehensive reform. I supervise the INS, including the Border Patrol, the detention, the deportation, deported lots of people when I was there. So I understand the issues. I've been down on the border. We do need to strengthen the border, make certain improvements in the physical security, strengthen the Border Patrol, technology, have them properly positioned, and, yes, some sort of barrier in many places. That's important. We also need to work on the visa program because many people, as you know, they overstay their visa. That's how they get here illegally. The second thing we need to do is then we need to work on E-Verify. Maybe many of your listeners probably know what that is, but some might not. That would require an employer, before he or she hired somebody, to check against a government database to make sure they are who they say they are. That was the reason that the 86 Act failed the last time we did the immigration reform, because an employer can just look at a document, and if the document appears to be legitimate, then he or she is off the hook when hiring somebody. It's like the bartender has a fake ID that he accepts for somebody who's really underage. That's the problem. If we control the hiring process that way, or verify that the person is legitimate, rather, through the E-Verify program, then we're going to choke off future illegal immigration. People won't be coming here to get a job because they won't be able to get a job. Once you do that, and as you secure the border as well, then you're left with this question of what to do with the 10 or 12 million people who are here illegally. If somebody's a criminal alien, and by criminal alien, that means they've been committing crimes other than their immigration violation. If they're a criminal alien, you got to get rid of them. Absolutely. Send them back to wherever it is they came from. But I would suggest, I if somebody's here and they're productive, they're paying their taxes, they get right with everything else, then I think you should provide that path to citizenship. The reason I feel that way is you're not going to be able to disrupt our society and our economy by having millions of people depart. That's one thing. The other thing is I've lived in Turkey, which is an Islamic country. It's gone from secular Islamic to much more religious. I've lived in France where there is no tradition of assimilation. I want to get us back to our tradition of assimilation. Think about our coins. It says, in God we trust on one hand side, but on the other it says, e pluribus unum, from many one. We need to get back to that if we're going to confront radical Islam and be together as one nation. So I want us all in there together. Have these people learn English? Absolutely, if they're going to get any benefit. But I think you need to provide that benefit so that we all are in this together.
Well, you know, Mark, we say that, and it sounds great in a soundbite, but here's the reality. We've got entire school districts now on the West Coast, where we'll be for that debate, that are teaching classes in Spanish. I mean, this is unheard. It's unprecedented, and nobody's doing a damn thing to stop that. So a lot of people, Mark, they look at this and they see their country going away. And so, yeah, it's fine to say we need the people to assimilate. Look, my grandparents were immigrants. They came to Ellis Island from Germany. They assimilated. We weren't allowed. We weren't allowed in our home to speak a word of German, not one.
Right.
Now we're getting students being taught in Spanish. How do you change it?
I agree with you on this. We've got to insist on the use of English, and that has to be the model. That you want to be here, fair enough. You're going to deal in and learn English. That has to be what we're getting to. We can't get to a situation where allowing islands of cultural separatism. That doesn't work. You want to respect your heritage. I get it. That's entirely appropriate. But you have to be American. So we need to reinforce that tradition of assimilation. That is an essential piece of this bargain that we need to have. I just don't think that we're going to be able to prosper as a nation unless we reinforce that tradition of shared sacrifice. Another thing that I'm proposing is putting in a program of national service, including a military component, because we no longer have this situation. I was 6.5 years old when John F. Kennedy gave his inaugural address in 1961, and we no longer have the attitude. Remember what he said, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. We don't have that attitude anymore. The politicians just serve up happy solutions, painless solutions to our problems. We've got to get our shoulders to the wheel and understand that it's going to take a little more effort than we've been asking people to put into things. And part of that is shared sacrifice, and it is this return to the melting pot, to the tradition of assimilation.
All right, Mark. Well said. We're out of time. We want to thank Mark Everson for being with us, former commissioner of the IRS, 2003 to 2007, Republican candidate for president. Go to Mark, F-O-R, foramerica.com. Mark, I look forward to seeing you at the debate in L.A. for the CNN debate in September. Thanks for being with us, sir.